The Hebrew language is, of course, divine in inception. This is created by God. The Torah testifies to it by saying that God spoke and created the world. That type of speech that the Torah is speaking about is not our human speech, but divine speech, which is the source of all of creation and all of existence. The 22 letters of the alphabet, which is the ABCs, so to speak, is like the DNA of all of creation, both spiritual and physical worlds. And so the design and structure of the Lashon HaKodesh Hebrew language teaches us valuable lessons. For example, the letter Alef, which means one, should be made up of one part, because one is one, right? But the letter Alef is actually made up of three components. It's technically three different letters. Two double letters, like two repeats of a letter, and one third letter. So the real letter Alef, when you dissect it, is made up of a Yud on top, a Yud on the bottom, and a Vav in the middle. So this is a bit counterintuitive. The letter that represents the number one should be one unit. So why is it three units? Number one, and number two, there's deeper messages within the letter Alef that can only exist in Lashon HaKodesh. And only in Torah and Lashon HaKodesh is the numerical value of a letter important and part of the divine revelation. So the numerical value for the letter Yud is 10, and the numerical value for the letter Vav is 6. So we have two Yuds and a Vav in this letter Alef, and so when you put it all together, you come to 26. What's significant about the number 26? It is the numerical value for God's great name that we read all the time in the Torah, and when we pray, it's the letters Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. This is the great essential name of God. And so the fact that the letter Alef, which is really one, equals in Gematria 26 is telling us that God is the source of all of existence. And there is a oneness that exists in our world with its creator. If God doesn't exist, we don't exist. We only exist within God. And the Gematria, the numerical value of this letter Alef, that is three components instead of one, is telling us that these three components that are hinted to in the letter Alef are one with God in essence. And this is a very powerful idea that you can only find and work with in the Lashon HaKodesh, in the Hebrew language that was created by God. So what are these three things that are one and that are connected to God? God, when he created the world, he divided it into two worlds, and he says he has a firmament in the middle that separates the two. These two worlds that the Bible starts speaking about, the heaven and the earth, with a firmament dividing the higher waters and the lower waters, is all hinted to in this letter Alef, because the higher Yud is the spiritual realms above. Then there's the physical world that we live in, earth, which is the lower Yud, and the Vav in the middle is this firmament that divides the two. The ultimate purpose of God dividing the higher and lower worlds was a separation. That separation was ultimately to reunite them in a better, more perfect way. And so the essence of both of these two worlds, which are currently divided, one world we see, one world we don't, the ultimate purpose of that division is to bring it to a more truthful and eternal unity in the end. So it's really still an Alef. It's represented in the one and the oneness of creation that we are potentially going to reach soon. And so the letter Alef speaks about two worlds that have to work through the separation to get back to the unity and the oneness. And again, the Gematria of the letter tells us that God is the source of all this. The capabilities that we have to become one again, in essence, is because God gives us that power, and we're actually accessing God's power to do so. So that is one interpretation of the Alef, and how it's really one, although it's three. And of course, God is the foundation of it all, the inner essence of it all, and the encompassing power of it all.